So I'm ready to make another plane. So I've made the biplane, I've made the Curtiss WARHAWK. Now I want to do the A-10. It's a Thunderbolt. It's kind of a cool plane. I was going to make another WARHAWK, but this will be my A-10 fuselage. Now I don't know exactly how this is supposed to look, but I have the pictures. I'm going to just start by cutting out the profile, and then I'll figure out, once I have that, how to taper the rest of the fuselage, mount the wings. I'm pretty sure I know how I'm going to mount the wings. But hang in there and we'll get this done. So for sticking this down, I use this glue. It's good stuff. So now that that's cut out, I'm going to leave this until I cut. First of all, trim it down just a little bit narrower, and then I'll taper the sides. I'll leave that bottom flat so it rides on the table, and then I'll cut that off. Here's the next phase of the landing gear assemblies. So nothing too crazy about this. The only thing is I notched the top because I want, see, this is where the wheels will mount. I'll do it down here so you can see it. They'll mount on here like this. I want them to wrap around the front of the wing just a little bit, and I will round all those off. The other thing I want to do is make sure that I leave this area flat, so where it mounts there's not, wide gaps. If I round over the wing, probably leave this mostly flat anyway until it gets way out here, and then I'll start rounding it a little bit just for fun. These still have to get shaped. They'll be all rounded, and then as you can see, the little landing pods, whatever, will go in there, and then the wheel mounts on here. So one of the challenges I have with a plane like this with landing struts with a wheel, it's just kind of hard to make that strong enough for, the wood construction on something this small. I could do it, but it wouldn't be very durable. So what I've just decided to do, I found that these, what are they, 1-inch wheels, which I bought to use for trains. They're almost the perfect size. So I'm using them. So what I'm doing, I'm using this cool little hubcap thing. It's just one of those finish washers, but it fits pretty darn good. And so what I was doing is I was using this screw, but it doesn't look that great. So instead, I'm still using the screw. If I can get this out of here now. I just ground the head down, and I did this on the disc sander. It makes sparks, but works pretty well, and it's stuck again. But anyway, looks a whole lot better without the head. I'm going to paint these black and just leave that, and when I put it into the wood, it's almost a press fit for this size bolt that I'm using, but I'll put some, probably some Gorilla Glue, and then I'll cut this off and shape it, and then I will have my little strut. So I'm making the engines for the A-10, and so this is what I'm looking for. Well, on one end anyway, the other end will be smaller. But I wanted this big old hole. This will get tapered, and boy, is that tricky. So here's what I have. I have this little V-block. I've lined it with sandpaper. I have it backed up against my fence, and I have this clamped down in horizontal mode on my shop smith. And I'm just going to drill it. It's going to work. So let's see. set up for the smaller exit because the back of the engine will taper down just a little bit more than the front. The front will just kind of get rounded off, but it tapers toward the rear. I still want it to look like the exhaust of an engine. I'll probably put a little dowel in there and I don't know, do something. But just check when you use these dowels that you didn't turn on the lathe, which I didn't. Like I said, I would. But the dowels aren't always round, so just make sure it lines up right. I'm using this to back up the end of the block, and just with amazing precision, I just kind of get a line going around here. I suppose I could do that on the front too. It's somewhere around here. Why not? All right, so for the front edge of this, I'm just rounding it over. I want this to be thinner, and just tapering the end of that. And I'm just gonna kind of go like that. When it gets to this end, it's a much longer, more gradual curve. I found that my thumb acts as a pretty good guide here. And you'll see it's easy to just kind of turn it like that. I know this looks sketchy. There's no getting around it. It is sketchy, but here's what I need to do. I need to drill a hole at a weird angle into a weird shape. I put a couple of reference marks. Best I can do what I'm doing. I'm using this block as a guide. I've kind of jacked up the back of the plane to make it somewhat level. I'm looking at the other hole that I drilled over there, and I'm just gonna eyeball it. Now that I started, just kind of check. That's all I'm doing. Keep it a little deeper. I'm getting it. It's exactly what I was going for. Pretty close. So my A-10 is coming along, I think, nicely. The only real part I haven't done yet is the vertical tail fins. Since I don't have plans or even good drawings, I'm just doing what looks right. So this is trial and error, but this is the shape I ended up with. It will be on there something like that, or for you to see it. You just got to do what looks right. They're obviously way too thick, so I'm going to thin them out here. I'll taper them a little bit. I do want to leave a place to mount them here, so this will be nice and flat. This is going to be a very weak glue joint. I'm going to attempt to put some small dowels in there too. It'll still be weak, but that's what I'm doing. They have to attach somehow. That's what I'll do. Follow along. Let me talk about this a minute. So we have obviously two vertical tail fins, one left and one right for the A-10. I reduced the thickness a little bit, but what really sells it is tapering the edges, the leading and trailing edges especially. Now, one thing where this mounts to the aircraft, to the horizontal wing, I want to keep that relatively flat so I get a good glue surface. So I have one there, one here. I'm going to try not to sand on this very much, but I still want to taper the rest of this. And the outside I can just go crazy with, which is sort of what I did here. So this I left a little bit flat, and then this will be tapered, and then I'll hand sand and like do the final work on that. Careful with your fingers when you're using these pieces this small. You may not have this kind of sander. It may be a big belt sander, whatever, but it's easy to let your fingers slip off of there. And once you've lost a couple fingertips, you go, that hurts. So be careful. So here's the blank I'm gluing up for that cockpit. And this is glued. I'm going to pick it up. It might fall apart, but the idea, it'll be sort of there. This will just add like a rib for the glass canopy, which of course is not glass, it's walnut. But this will get all cut down and shaped, and hopefully it'll look cool. 25-degree angle, just sliced it through a piece of contrasting wood. This is pine because it was laying right there, and hopefully this will look good. I have quite the balance problem on this. When I put it up on the wheels, because they're right about here, the weight of all this junk in the back, and because this is very, very light up here, it tilts, and it's supposed to sit on its three wheels like this. So I'm adding weight. I will probably try to go get some fishing weights, but for now, I'm hoping that these big, somewhat heavy nuts will help weigh down the front of this thing. Okay, it's time for assembly of this A-10 Thunderbolt. And so, I'll show you a little bit of what happened. So first thing, when I mounted everything up, the weight back here on the engines with the tail, it was just too heavy and it kept sitting down like this, and I wanted to sit level. So I added as much weight as I could. I put 4 of these big gnarly 5/8 bolts in there. I smashed up some fishing weights, stuck them in there, and then it still wasn't enough, so I had to end up moving. Let me dump that out. I had to move the wing back just a little bit. The wheels are back here now, and so that's the fulcrum. But it sits the way I need it to now. A little patch there. I'm going to do a little bit more sanding there, but that color is going to stay there. From the top, from the sides, you won't really see too much of that. It'll be fine. And then this mess up here, so there's a couple of nuts down here under the wing. There are a couple of up here which will be under the cockpit when I get that glued on, so you won't see that. And then this stuff is ready to go in. So I sprayed just to try to make it a little bit easier to finish. I sprayed this with poly. Did a little bit of hand sanding, and I'll wax it as well. But I didn't want to get the glue didn't want to get poly where the glue was going to go, so I covered it with tape. I suggest you do the same. And then this goes into the rear of the fuselage here, and I'm going to do that now. This will get a little bit of a chance to set up before I go much farther with this. And then I'll want to clean this up, because as you can see, I just dumped the weights of the cockpit on as well. And then once and for all, these weights will stop falling out. And very faint marks where this would go, so I could cover it without fear of seeing those nuts and weights. And then it just has to look good from 50 feet